Hello, welcome to the Bigger Truth Show. I am Scott McMahon, and I've got today's gonna be a good show. Where the title of this show is FAFO, which stands for F around and find out. And this is one of the favorite slogans of Ivan Raiklin and a lot of the military intelligence guys that are part of Flynn's cohort. So Krista says, "Hey Scott, hey there. I'm glad you're here. Everyone is most welcome to make comments and questions as we go, and we're gonna see where this all goes. So I've got kind of a loose outline and a bunch of things I want to talk about around consequences, and that's really what I think the FAFO is all about. Is you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I think that Flynn has been, and his whole network has been playing stupid games for a long time. And I think that most of us who have looked at the evidence of and followed the evidence of what Flynn has been doing ever since he was in, really throughout his military career, throughout his entire career, but especially from the moment that he joined Trump's campaign in early 2016. And even before that, as he was bringing upon himself the stain of Putin. In 2013, he went into the GRU, which is the Russian CIA, against the protests of our own CIA, who said that it was a really bad idea. And from the time that he left the DIA, he was Obama's DIA director. And from the time that he left Obama's DIA and formed Flynn Intel Group in Stanley McChrystal's kitchen in his home. The registered address was Stanley McChrystal's home, who just a few months ago, very publicly in the New York Times, endorsed Kamala Harris, and he was also running Defeat Disinfo, which was using AI and paid influencers to convince all of us to go along with the vaccine mandates and all of the COVID insanity and restrictions on our own freedoms and violations of our entire Bill of Rights over COVID. And so then his involvement as Crossfire Razor, Flynn's involvement as Crossfire Razor and the Crossfire Hurricane, pretty much all of the associations between Trump's campaign and Russia were influenced or came through Flynn. And so there's a lot there. Really, without Flynn, Crossfire Hurricane would not have had the teeth that it had. It really wouldn't have gone anywhere. And had Flynn informed Trump that he was under investigation by the FBI when he knew, then Trump most likely would not have made him the national security advisor and had to fire him, not just because he lied to Pence and lied to the FBI, but also because he was under investigation. And and so Trump, I'm certain that Trump would not have hired him. He tweeted later on, once he found out more about the timeline and when Flynn actually knew that he was under investigation, he later tweeted that he would not have hired him. And then we go forward into 2020, after just 3 weeks after Trump pardoned Flynn. And I don't know why he did that. I don't know if he was pressured to do it. I don't know if he thought, he's going to give himself enough rope to give Flynn enough rope to hang himself with. I don't know why Trump pardoned Flynn. But just 3 weeks later, on December 18th, 2020, he was pardoned on November 25th, 2020. And then on December 18th, he and Patrick Byrne and Sidney Powell got into the West Wing of the White House and met with the dogs are just going crazy. I apologize. So they got into the West Wing of the White House. Hey, Kobe, come here. Hey. All right. So they got into the West Wing of the White House, and they tried to convince Trump to sign the Insurrection Act. And had he signed the Insurrection Act, that would have been the that really would have been the basis, in my opinion, for Trump being charged with actual treason. The Insurrection Act called for the National Guard to take over the voting machines and the ballots in the 7 counties and the 7 key swing states and do a hand recount. The hand recount would have verified the tabulator count, to everyone's surprise, because we had all been psyoped into believing that the fraud was in the machines and by the Flynn camp. But the reality is that there was a ballot for every vote, and they took great pains to do that. I believe that all of that was pre-coordinated, and um, and so thankfully, Pat Cipollone and Rudy Giuliani talked Trump out of the Insurrection Act, and we go forward even more, and we see how Flynn infiltrated the election. His people infiltrated the election integrity movement, and they ran heavily on the machine fraud psyop all the way through this November's election. They were talking about the machines, which was a carefully crafted military psychological operation to disenfranchise Republican voters and votes, to convince as many Republicans as possible not to vote, because what's the point? It's all rigged. So the psyops, the narratives that they were putting out, that the whole Flynn Network was putting out throughout this election cycle, were very clearly designed to distract people, to cause us to despair, to lead us into hopelessness, and really to disenfranchise us. They were designed to cause Trump to lose. And so, this is kind of a review of really all of the research I've got on my Substack, biggertruthmedia.com. I've got receipts to back up all of this stuff, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. Krista says, I'm having some questions even about Trump. Why is he a huge Bitcoin guy right now? He hated it before. I have no idea. That's something that I don't know a ton about. I'm familiar with blockchain and how it works, and I understand the mechanics of Bitcoin. I have no idea why. That's something that I just don't know much about. I certainly don't know what Trump's thinking is there, but I do know that philosophically, just if you zoom out with it, the Bitcoin is there are aspects of Bitcoin. It's certainly preferable to a global a currency that would be controlled by the World Monetary Fund, or the Federal Reserve. It's not actually an asset-based currency, but it is a restricted in quantity. There are there are aspects of Bitcoin that could help us to preserve our liberties, and also if everybody in the world used Bitcoin, the world would be I believe a freer place and a more prosperous place. There are certainly challenges, there with when you don't have a growing monetary supply. It's not like there would not be times of hardship, and recessions and even depressions. They would still happen, because there would be money shortages, and that does happen when there's monetary shortages. So it's there would still be price fluctuations. There would still be issues, because we live in a fallen world and people do crazy, stupid things. So that's my total aside on Bitcoin. So here we go with a tweet. Oh, and just I have got receipts all over my Substack. It's biggertruthmedia.com. And if you would please subscribe for $5 a month, it means it not only is very encouraging to me, but it also really helps as I am trying to figure out how to pay the bills. It is very difficult as a independent as an independent journalist to actually do this full time and and make a full-time income at it, especially starting out. And this is the reason why our media is so compromised. The media is so compromised on the right and the left because really it's a position of power and influence, but it's not it, you know, I'm way too small to make money off of advertising, and I probably could do better with doing affiliate stuff. But I don't know. I see it as a ministry, and I'm trying to get to the point where I have an audience that's large enough, and I'm very grateful for all of you, but I'm trying to get to grow my audience so that um, it does produce a full time income and enables me to improve my product, and so and the production value and all that. So I am working on it and getting a little bit better every day. We're doing course corrections every day, and I think that what I'm doing here with going down to one show a week is going to help with that too. So, anyways, let's move on with the show. Ivan Raiklin posted this on X in July, and he was all about. So this is actually the day before. This is July 14th. This is the day after the assassination attempt, the day before the convention. And Flynn and Ivan Raiklin, the whole Flynn Network, was posting this Trump Flynn meme all the way through, even really until the moment that JD Vance stepped onto the convention floor. Even hours after it was extremely clear, because JD Vance was already en route to Milwaukee, that it was very clear that Trump had chosen JD Vance to be his vice president. Ivan Raiklin and all of his minions were still posting this meme. And it says Trump Flynn FAFO. that's the message that they wanted. And this is just one more thing. They're trying to put Flynn in second place to Trump in people's minds as a replacement to Trump. In the event, I believe, something happened to him, just like Roger Stone said, we're running a contingency campaign for Flynn for president. And this was exactly what they're doing there. So, all of this, I kind of shared this whole story of all this kind of grievances against Flynn, but this is really a list of things that it's wrongdoing. And this is a list of reasons why Flynn is working against Trump, and why, I believe that Flynn has been working against Trump and against MAGA. And I've been saying now for months that Flynn is the enemy of Trump and the enemy of MAGA. And not the only one, obviously, but he is certainly an enemy. And that, of course, is my opinion, but I'm sharing the reasons that I've come to that. Blake says Trump didn't give them awards. Yes, that is that is true, and that's something that I think it was Jesse Waters said on Fox last night, that Trump gave them awards. So Jesse Waters himself was psyoped. He was misled by these psyops. So that is that. And the question that I have, and that is the basis of the show today, is how are we going to find justice? Because I think that there's a lot of we've been injured in a lot of ways by the current regime, the Biden regime, which has been a regime, not an administration, and it is clearly not just Biden, but the entire deep state has acted in a way that's violated our human rights, with COVID, with the funny business in the 2020 election, with the immigration, the human trafficking. There's so many ways that we have been violated, and I think that there's a collective source of trauma as a result of that. But I think that there's also a collective source of trauma, or a sense of trauma, from the psyops, from the deliberate psychological manipulation that has been done to us by the media on the left and by the Flynn Network. this so-called independent media on the right. And I think we're seeing that even right now with this whole push to adopt Kash Patel. And Kash himself has, I read his book, Government Gangsters, and Government Gangsters is he talks all about all the bad guys on the left, and he phrases the entire thing as this is the deep state is a function of the left. Like all of the bad guys, all the gangsters are the usual suspects on the left: the Comey, the McCabe, the Strzok, Page, Clapper, Brennan. Those are the bad guys, and the people within the FBI. And he doesn't talk much about the CIA, doesn't talk much about the DIA, and he has a whole chapter, in chapter 12 is devoted to Flynn and to excusing him, to excusing his actions as Crossfire Razor, that I believe set up Trump for all of that. So, yeah, so that is, the wide scale, just open arms adoption of Kash. Is Kash going to bring justice? One person shouldn't be able to bring justice, but I do think that he'd probably bring some, greater transparency than what we have. He's talking about publishing the Epstein client list. I think that's a good thing. I think there's a lot of good things that Kash says that he wants to do, but he certainly is silent on exposing those on our side, and I'm concerned about that, or supposedly on our side. Including Devin Nunes too, who hired Kash, and in their investigation of Crossfire Razor, they had to have seen the way that Flynn was being used to set up Trump. I just don't see how they could not have seen the negative impact of Flynn on that campaign. I just don't see how they could not have seen that. So, it was a cover up. I mean, they did cover up the book, and the investigation covered up Flynn's role. And so I just wonder, and this is my theory, and I could be wrong, but I just wonder if the reason for that cover up isn't to try to hide the role of whether it was just knowledge, foreknowledge, complicity, what the role might have been of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees in Crossfire Hurricane, of which Devin Nunes was a part in the House, and and Grassley and other Republicans that were a part of that. So, I'm not sure. A couple comments. Want to get caught up a little bit. So, Blake says, how much? Hang on, I missed how much to rent out Mar-a-Lago. The guess that I saw is it's probably, for an event like that, it's probably $200,000. And good for you. You said, Blake says, I love General Flynn until I dug in and learned. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? I mean, because they do the same things over and over again. They use the same psyops, the same methods. They engage in psychological manipulation, and they have a limited number of tools in their tool belt, and they keep using them over and over again. We all have eyes and ears, and not all use the critical thinking. And that's exactly right. And that's what cognitive dissonance is, right? And where you just can't, psychologically, you become you're rendered incapable of challenging your own assumptions. Sweet Tea says, Dan Scavino posted, stop calling me, stop texting me, there's no place for you. That's paraphrase. It is pretty close to what he said. I wonder if the message was for certain agents of Flynn trying to lobby for a Trump appointment. And that may be. I think that's likely. I think that's there are people who are genuine, kind of political operatives, establishment types that that he was probably thinking of. And yeah, I think he was also probably thinking about Flynn. And Blake says, reader listening to General Kellogg's book. Yep. And that is, I would agree that I think it's chapter 8 there, talks about Flynn. And it is a good book. Okay. So let's move on. Next slide. So this right here, Josh Reed, he's got this Red Pill podcast, whatever, Red Pills TV, and he's not a big podcaster. And I just wonder if he could really afford. He said, "What an amazing night at Mar-a-Lago tonight." So was he there? Could he afford a ticket? And if so, how? But I'm going to go into the finances for the Fight Like a Flynn pack because the Flynn. I'm going to do that here shortly. I've got it. But the Flynn Network, the Flynn is constantly creating new organizations, entities, whether they're nonprofits, whether they're for profits. He's constantly creating new organizations, and I think that there's a lot of similarities financially. A lot of them are just private organizations where there's no transparency or disclosure requirements, and so as a journalist, it just closes you off from being able to find it. Law enforcement could, um, but we can look at this Fight Like a Flynn pack because it's a pack, and so we can see actually what they did this year. So I'm going to look at that, and it's going to kind of shed some light on that. And let me go ahead and do that even right now since I'm talking about it. So here is, I'm going to make this bigger. This is the FEC website, just fec.gov, and it's an awesome tool. Highly recommend it. Whoops. All right. And what I've got open right here is the receipts for this year for how much money has actually been received by, let me see if, okay, so this is the summary page. So if you look up an entity, this is Fight Like a Flynn, and the total, it starts with this. This is a 2-year period for 23 and 24. And so the period starts January 1st of 2023 until just 2 weeks ago, November 25th, 2024. So this goes all the way through the election. And in that time, they raised a total of $1.267 million. And so you can see that. And then the total spent was $1.143 million. So they spent, in the end, they have 124,000 in cash. Okay. So that's the summary. And let's go into the receipts. And here I'm going to click on sorting by the amount so we can see the largest receipts. So the receipts are the donations, right? And here's where it's interesting. These first three, I don't know if you can see them. It might be hard to see on the phone. So the first three are $375,000, another one for $375,000, another one for $250,000. So those three total about $1 million. Now remember, over this 2-year period, they raised $1.24 million or 227, $1.25 million. About $1 million of that came from one source, and that source is Haverford Valley LLC. Haverford Valley LLC is Patrick Byrne. I looked that up. I don't have the receipt for that, but it is run by Patrick Byrne. So Haverford Valley LLC, Patrick Byrne gave $1 million to Fight Like a Flynn PAC. And the rest of the money all came from individuals. So we got William Torrance is the largest donor to the Fight Like a Flynn PAC. He gave about $90,000. And then we've got 12,500 from Diana Parker, Charlie Villasante, Vic Miller, his wife. So Vic Miller is interesting. Mike Flynn gave $5,000. So he made a donation to his own PAC of $5,000. Vic Miller gave $5,000. Vic Miller's wife, I'm assuming this is his wife, Magdalena Miller. And so Vic Miller runs the Hollow in Sarasota County, which is kind of like their meeting place. That's where it's this kind of social get together, club hangout kind of place. They've got activities for kids, shooting range, that kind of stuff. And so that's where the money came from. Now, why? Just that kind of begs the question. Why would Patrick Byrne give $1 million to this organization. You know, um, in the Matrix, glad you're here. You say Proud Boys, and um, yeah, um, I'm not sure if you're responding to somebody else's comment, but um, the the um, oh, the Hollow Proud Boys, yes. At the Hollow, the Proud Boys are there are a lot of connections between the Proud Boys and the Hollow. That is for sure. And Patrick Byrne also, from what I understand, helped to with travel arrangements on January 6th for several members of the Proud Boys. So I guess there's two connections there. So why would Patrick Byrne give this money to this PAC? And Patrick Byrne is also the primary donor to the America Project. I'm sure he's the primary donor to America's Future. And, he's given money to a lot of these organizations, and um, the yeah. And Jeff says Byrne admitted it. Yep, and um, it's funny the things that Byrne admits to. I mean, he knows that he can't hide it, so he just admits it, and then he seems to have this attitude of, "Well, I admitted that. What's the big deal?" So, um, and it is their dark money network. It's where does Patrick Byrne's money come from? His father was the co-founder with um, of Geico Insurance, and um, and so he's got a lot of inherited wealth, but he's also the founder um, of Overstock.com, and Overstock.com sells a lot of cheap Chinese stuff. And Patrick Byrne does have connections with the Chinese Communist Party. He has lived in China. He has admitted to that. He's admitted to living in other communist countries. I'm not sure which ones they are, but he's recently spent a lot of time in Azerbaijan, which I'm sure is a hot tourist destination. Um, but he wrote his college thesis in Marxism and Maoism, and I was told that he's admitted at the age of 17 that he ran an errand for a prominent Chinese gentleman. And what he doesn't admit is that that person was a CCP, high level CCP um, person and Chinese Communist Party member. So, I just wonder, and this is my own speculation, I just wonder if, how much of his money and wealth that is flowing through here is actually coming from the CCP, possibly in the form of overly reduced prices on the merchandise that his company sells. That he's no longer an executive of the company, but he's still a primary stockholder. It's possible. I don't know. I've seen that um, with other people that are involved in this network that have retail businesses. So that's not incredibly. I don't think that that's a stretch of the imagination. Um, and he's covered by the FBI, and yeah, I think he is. He does have connections. Certainly, he is admitted to obeying Uncle Sam when Uncle Sam calls. Um, so we've got the majority of the money. Like, why give that money to the PAC? I think one, it shows they can tell the people, look, we've already raised all this money, we've already raised 1 million, and this is all the good that we're going to do with it. We're going to talk about where it goes in just a minute. But really, I think it's more about raising that other money. But they raised $250,000, $280,000 or something from the public. Um, from individuals, many of whom are, the larger donations are people that are clearly close to Flynn. Why are they but then there's a whole lot of small donations. I talked to somebody who has I've got a source who's had extensive experience working directly with the Flynns. And she told me, I was kind of asking her this question, and her theory is that the reason is not so much to grift and raise money, because they have access, in her words, they have access to unlimited funds. that the real reason is to take money. They just want to, there's a motivation to actually take money from people. And so Jeff and Shannon have talked about this with, taking like a grandma's, welfare money, and that they actually talk about that they want to take people's last money. And I think that there's a spiritual element too, because the Bible says where your treasure is, your heart is also. And so I think that, they want people beholden in that way. But I do think that it's not an altruistic intention, and behind this grifting, this taking of money from people. And when people start to wake up to it, like what Blake you described here, and I've talked to a lot of other people, the people that have given the most and they wake up to it, they tend to be the strongest voices against what these people are doing. And I think that that's why we're beginning to see some major cracks forming in the Flynn Network right now. So let's talk about where to go here. Let's talk about the disbursements and where this money went, because I think this is fascinating. Uh, what's his name? Alex Stone. I guess he's like, I think he might be Sean's or Roger Stone's nephew. He put out a video. He says nobody helped Trump more than Flynn. In fact, Trump wouldn't even be president right now if it weren't for Flynn. That is such a load of crap. That is just garbage. Because really, if it weren't for if it weren't for Flynn, Trump would have won by a much more comfortable margin. And because he wouldn't have been fighting all those psyops. He wouldn't have been doing everything he could to just encourage his own base to vote. And to overcome the machine fraud psyop and all the other psyops. So let's look at the disbursements. This is where they sent the money. Did they give any money? And let's look at the larger ones first. Moms for America Action. That's $150,000 right there. $50,000 to Spartan Sword in Virginia. Not sure what that is. $50,000 to Operation Free Nation. $50,000 to the Gold Institute for International Strategy. That's the Eli Gold Institute. This is, and I'm pretty sure Flynn is on the board of that. And that is, there's John Shattuck is on the board of that. There's a whole nother story with Eli Gold. The Early Vote Action Pact, Citizens Defending Freedom. We've talked about Citizens Defending Freedom quite a bit. And that was in January of this year. That was probably a lot of their seed money. That was a $50,000 right there. That is the organization. A subsidiary of Citizens Defending Freedom is the Remnant Alliance. And that is an organization that they admit that their objective is to embed human intelligence assets into churches to monitor the local community for nefarious actors. They're spying on the local communities. This is local action, national impact right here. This is what he means by it. Embedding human intelligence sources into churches to spy on the local communities. So this is where the money's going. Catholics for Catholics, early vote action, coalition of leaders. Is there anything? Let's keep looking here. VAF LLC, $75,000 there. Keep looking. Is there anything for Trump? Another 25,000 for VAF LLC. I looked that up. That's based in Cocoa Beach. I didn't recognize the names involved in that. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. I've got too many tabs open. I apologize. So here is VAF LLC, in case anybody knows anything about this. I looked this up on the Florida Secretary of State's website, and this is the principal address is in Cocoa, Florida, Lake Point Set Road, and there's the agent's name is Robin Cornell, and then there's a Kevin Walsh associated with that. So they received about $100,000 or more from Fight Like a Flynn PAC. Don't know exactly what it is. Okay, so let me make this bigger so you can possibly see it. Still looking. Is there anything for Trump? No, oh, here's even more for VAF. So it's well over 100,000 that they got. No, Moms for America. Which another Flynn org. Let's go to the next page. We're down to $10,000 donations. Lazy Eyes production, more VAF LLC. They got a lot of money. VAF did. So, Banal Law Group, Jesse Banal, that's his attorney, who's also Cash's attorney, by the way. More VAF, more Banal, more Banal. I don't see anything going to the Trump team or state Republican parties. Looking for candidates. More Banal. Nope, nothing for Trump. So, yeah. Oh, right. Well, so, I'm not sure how any sane person could suggest that if it weren't for Flynn, that Trump wouldn't have won. Not only did he, and this isn't unique to Fight Like a Flynn PAC, but, Flynn himself did not make any contributions to Trump or his team or the RNC or state parties. The America Project made plenty of contributions to organizations that were linked to insurgents within state parties that were trying to divide, as I was talking about yesterday, to divide and destroy state parties, which obviously hurt Trump. um, in fact, there is zero chance that had the true grassroots warriors, rational people in Michigan not kicked out Christina Caramo, there is zero chance that Trump would have won Michigan. So, and I'm extremely, extremely confident about that. So this all kind of leads to how, how do we get justice for this? I mean, there's something really wrong here. And this guy, Joshua Reed, says, I'm sure Bigger Truth in the Matrix and Shady Groove would have loved to be in attendance to spin some bullshit narrative out of this. Just give it a few days. The real punch to their psyop is coming. So he seems to imply that he's got some inside knowledge about something. Maybe he thinks that Trump's going to appoint Flynn. This is one of those pictures that I posted this on X that tells a whole story. And this is, of course, Flynn holding on to Trump's arm right after this happened, right here. And he's holding out his hand. And just held out his hand, hoping that Trump would take it. He's holding out his hand, hoping Trump would take it, and Trump didn't take it. So I think that's hilarious. And so then, there he is grabbing his arm, and that was right before he reached out his hand, hoping that Trump would take it. So this is the story that I've been telling, I think, is the story behind this picture. And Flynn really wants to, I think, I really believe that had the assassination attempt been successful, Flynn would actually be the president-elect right now. Jeff says, LOL, Josh Reed, what's with this heroizing Flynn crap? And definitely agree. They make Flynn more of a hero than Trump by far. And you cannot criticize him. You cannot, you can't question him. It's Jennifer, it's so good to see you. When was that? And this was just a couple nights ago. If you're talking about this picture, this was just a couple nights ago at Mar-a-Lago. And the whole Flynn Network has just been all about this picture. There's the video there. So this was an event that was actually scheduled a couple months ago in September, October. And I knew as soon as it was scheduled that this was kind of a contingency plan for them. Because I really believe, as my opinion, that they were hoping that Trump was going to lose. I just looking at the narratives and everything that they were putting out there, I was really and what they were doing in the state parties, that they were hoping that Trump was going to lose. And at the same time, they're running all these narratives trying to get people to take up arms. And I was really speaking out about that. Um, and so in the event of a Trump loss, they were hoping to create an actual insurrection that would to ultimately quash MAGA and destroy MAGA. Um, and so when they scheduled this was kind of in the middle of this, and I think that was a contingency plan for them in the event that Trump won, to try to sidle up Flynn right next to him, and to buy his favor by renting and paying for the space. So like I said, the estimate that I heard was about $200,000 to rent that space to hold that event. That's the money that the Mar-a-Lago made off of it. And I'm not sure if that's the case, but so, he was trying to sidle himself up to next to Trump to try to get himself into the White House. And, um, and I think that, there's certainly, he's been using this event all week, and his followers have been using this event to try to boost his credibility, to try to heal the cracks in their House of Cards foundation that they have built. And yeah, and that's a good question, Jennifer. How did he get in? He they just rented it, and so it's a resort that you have to. It's a membership resort, and so he's got a close friend that Flynn does. That's a member. Flynn himself is not a member, and they just reserved and rented the space, and like any other member can, and um, so. Oh, Cameron Moore, who, by the way, Cameron Moore was on this list as a major donor to the Fight Like a Flynn PAC. So, how about that? Thank you, Jeff. So that is, I think that's kind of there's a lot of story here behind this picture, behind the event, and they're pushing this out there like, look, this is Flynn. He's a good guy. He's right next. This is, Trump invited him. Trump didn't invite him. And in fact, Jesse Waters was psyoped into believing that Trump was handing out awards. Trump was not handing out awards. Flynn himself bribed the Tucker, Kid Rock, Mel Gibson to be there. They paid them, and they gave them awards to be there. and I don't have the picture queued up and ready, but the picture, I thought the picture of Mel Gibson in his board shorts and Crocs right next to Flynn in a tuxedo and Kid Rock, and none of them are smiling. I just thought that was an awesome picture. I love that picture. So that is the whole event is just nonsense. So I want to talk about, like, where could we find justice in this? And one thing that, so it's through, the idea of, traditional justice would be through the criminal investigation, through our legal judicial process. And when I think about what Flynn has done that could be prosecuted as a crime, the only thing, like, most of what he's done, he's got plausible deniability. It's at arm's length. He could just say, well, I didn't know that was happening. I didn't have anything to do with that. I didn't do that. I do think that there's an exception, and that is Stacey Burke. And this actually, this is where I came up with the name for today's show. Was actually, before I get to Stacey, I'm going to talk about myself for just a minute. So this guy, who is a part of, he admits here to being a part of the First Amendment Praetorian. The First Amendment Praetorian is a private security militia that was formed by a guy named Robert Patrick Lewis, was the founder of it. And it acted as the Flynn Network private security organization. They were providing security. They registered as a government contractor on November 25th, which happened to be the same day that, and I'll post on X. I'll post I've got some the documents to show that. So he on November 25th, Robert Patrick Lewis got the 1AP's status as a government contractor on that day. I believe that it was actually formed as an organization in October, right before the election. And so 1AP, and there are a bunch of former Eric Prince, like Blackwater government contractors or military contractors. And so Shady Groove, Shannon, Jeff's partner there at the MG show, went on this guy. His name's Joe, Average Joe. He goes by Average Joe. And I've got his full name and I've done some digging. I've got his full name and I've got his hometown, and I'm going to pull a background check on him. So I got all his digits. I'm not going to dox him. He's saying that I'm threatening to dox him. I'm not going to dox him. He wants to be anonymous. So that's fine until, whatever. But he posted this, or he hosted
dipshit talking points. That's all.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
This is the end of the conversation. And so I'm just going to let this play out, and you can decide whether you think that maybe this guy might have gotten himself into some legal problems.
You don't want to understand what's going on. You want to keep running your narrative that Flynn is somehow a good guy.
He is a good guy, and you're going to find out the hard way. Thanks for coming in, Shady.
I'm not going to find out anything.
You know what's really funny? He says Flynn is a good guy, and you're going to find out the hard way that he's a good guy. If he's a good guy, there's no finding out the hard way. You find out the good way if he's a good guy. There's no harm that can come to you if he's actually a good guy.
You are a fake news.
You'll see. You'll find out. You'll find out. Just like you keep talking shit about First Amendment Praetorian, you'll find out.
Oh, yeah, I know that you're with them, buddy. I got your history, dude. It's okay. It's okay to be the Oath Keeper and the 3%ers. We got all of their stuff, bro. We got all of the stuff for all the video from January.
Yeah, because you're full of shit. First off, talking that First Amendment Praetorian were the ones that were helping the insurrection. Well, I was fucking there, dude.
Oh, I bet you were. And I bet whenever we get the videos of what you were doing, it's not going to be too good either. And I think that's why your crew and Jake Lang and all these other people.
I have all my videos. That's right. I do have video.
Clay Higgins has got your videos too.
Good. You know who else has got the video? The people of you talking shit. All the people at First Amendment. Good luck to you.
Have any. Patrick Byrne can barely.
Good luck to you with all that. Because you know who you pissed off when you talk shit about First Praetorian? You're gonna find out.
I don't care. I've been talking about him for the last 3 or 4 years.
You're gonna find out. Don't you worry.
Go ahead and threaten me.
And same with your little butt buddy Scott McMahon. That fucktard.
Oh.
So this came. There was no mention of me leading up to this at all. And whoops. So there was no mention of me. Oh, this happened. Hang on. There we go. Leading up to this. So that just, I was right. I just rolled right off of his tongue. So I was obviously front of mind for him, but they really don't like being talked about. So
yeah, he's another fucking idiot.
He's right on to all your little psyops out there in Arizona and Michigan. He's all over it. It's really awesome to see him exposing you freaks.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, Shady.
Keep the threats up, buddy. I'll be here.
Yeah, not for long.
Yeah, you keep saying.
Okay, so you won't be here for long. So I mean, that is a death threat.
And that's been like 6 years. You people have been saying that.
How should people get a hold of you on your Give, Send, Go? Is that the best place to reach you?
No, I don't really need anybody to reach me at all.
Perfect. See ya.
Later.
I'm gonna let this roll for just a second because this is funny.
This is the problem with a lot of these people, man.
Problem with you. You not get rid of me?
That was awesome.
I just did, fucktard. So there you go. This is the problem with the cognitive dissonance, right?
Cognitive dissonance. Hey, dude, it's dissonance, not dissidence. And I don't think he even knows what he's talking about because he is just dripping with cognitive dissonance, which is the inability, the psychological incapability of examining your own assumptions. And I want to give props to Shannon. He just wiped the floor with him. This was at the end of the debate, and he was trying to end it because he was just getting beat so bad in this debate. It lasted about 20-25 minutes. Shannon did a fantastic job. But I think that is a veiled, not even a thinly veiled death threat against me and Shannon. And what he didn't know is that I had just been elected to county commission. And so, I was a elected official. And when he made this threat, and after I'm sworn in next week, I'm going to be meeting with my sheriff, and we're going to have a little conversation about that. And not just about him, but about 1AP. And Robert Patrick Lewis has on multiple occasions threatened to sue me for criticizing them. And Maybe he'll bring it, maybe he won't. But this is, I think that they need to face consequences. And this relates now to Stacey Burke. I think that there is the what they engaged in against Stacey is the most criminal of all of the potentially criminal of everything that I have seen from the whole Flynn Network. And it's kind of a long story, but I do want to summarize it. So Stacey I'm gonna break something right now, break some information and tell a story that has never been told. I told it once in a members podcast with Stacey. I've spent a lot of time on the phone understanding her story. She's somebody that I've come to respect and admire and consider a friend. And she is super, super smart, an outstanding researcher. She's finishing up law school right now, and she is suing Mike Flynn, Kelly Townsend, Sidney Powell, and others, pro se, representing herself. Right now, she's waiting for the judge's decision. It's been taking a while, and I'm praying for a good outcome. But the judge has definitely demonstrated a bias against Stacey, and on the side of some 14 or 15 high power Washington, D.C. attorneys that she's fighting against. I mean, this is a total David versus Goliath thing. And she does plan to appeal if she can. And she's already filed for an appeal. And so she does plan to do that. The judge has demonstrated in the past, there have been numerous complaints against this judge, an Arizona judge, for bias against pro ses, which is representing oneself. And so it's unlikely that she's going to win. I'll put that out there. But I know her story, and as I share her story now with you, I think it's a good one. Jeff says, I mean, they kidnapped her, and yeah, that's what Robert Patrick Lewis wants to sue me for. Is I summarized her story by saying that they essentially kidnapped her in her own home. I would say allegedly, and but there are actually, she's got affidavits from two people who were like contractors or whatever, and they came to her home that they did not. One of them was a retired police officer, came to her home to deliver something. Saw the people that were living there. They were in her home for 7 weeks. They did not let her leave without them. They, even for Christmas, she wanted to take her children out to dinner by herself without them, and they did not let her. They had to tag along, and they forced her to pay for their meal as well. She spent over $3,000 buying them food and alcohol over those 7 weeks, and that was, I believe, in retaliation for her not signing an affidavit that related to the Korean Air plane full of ballots. And so that supposedly landed in Arizona at Sky Harbor Airport. So what I'm going to break here is why did this happen to her? That was the part of the story before I even met her, that I could not figure out, because there's in all of the reporting, there has been quite a bit of reporting about her story. And in all of it, none of it answers the question of why Stacey. And so, and this is, I think that this is absolutely stunning. It is hugely important. And it also is very revelatory about Flynn himself. So, and to understand it, you gotta actually go back to, in 2010, she became a school board member. She ran for school board. And this was, at the Tea Party kind of wave in 2010. And she kind of rode that wave and became a Republican school board member in Gilbert School District in Arizona. And through that, she became friends with a lot of the power players in Republican politics in Arizona, and including Andy Biggs, Kelly Townsend. She came to know Shelby Bush, Liz Harris. She ended up ultimately having close relationships and sometimes friendships with a lot of these people, and certainly been in communication with them. And she on Facebook, she's disabled. She has pulmonary hypertension, which is a very severe disease. The medication that she has to take to keep her alive, she would die without it, costs about $750,000 a year. And she so she doesn't leave the house, and she's got a history of where her ex-husband was very abusive, and so she has a protected address, and she wouldn't really allow people into her home. She was very careful about that, but she would spend her time at home on her computer, and a lot of the time was just researching. And she's a very good researcher. In fact, she did a lot of research while she was on the school board on the former school board members that were there that led to their convictions on tens of millions of dollars of fraud, charges of fraud. And that was because of Stacey's work. So she had a reputation, especially with Andy Biggs, of being a top-notch researcher. And in 2016, she got to know a guy named Mark Zaid on Facebook. Mark Zaid is a spy attorney. He's on the left. And he posted, and I don't have that post handy, but I included it in my Tulsa presentation. And in that post on Facebook, he laid out a 3-part plan. And this was posted just 3 weeks after Flynn joined Trump's campaign. So this is, I think the timing is very important. And that 3-part plan that he said this was like his dream for the Republican Party. And this guy is very far left. He's got security clearances. He represents clients for whom their identity or natures of their case are confidential. And so he has security. He's able to get the security clearances to be able to represent those people. That's who Mark Zaid is. And so his 3-part plan, the first one is to fracture the Republican Party. Second one is to split off the far right from the party. And the third is to replace the Republican Party with a new national security party. So as we know, as conservatives, if you are, not everyone listening is probably a conservative, but as you know, there's a spectrum in politics. We either have security or we have freedom. You can't have all of both. And it's a trade-off. It's always a trade-off. So you get more security, you get less freedom. And sorry about that. So that is, to have a national security party to replace the Republican Party would be the end of freedom in this country. And so she saved a screenshot of that, and I shared that in my Tulsa presentation, and I can post that on X later as well. Fast forward to the impeachment. This is the impeachment over the Ukraine phone call. Mark Zaid created a fund for the impeachment whistleblower before that call even happened. And he represented the whistleblower in the impeachment. And he was basically, from what I understand, the architect of the impeachment. Stacey found out through her research that Mark Zaid has been going to synagogue for many years with Mike and Barbara Ledeen. Mike and Barbara Ledeen are extremely close with Mike Flynn, like one of Flynn's closest friends. In fact, during the 2016 presidential campaign, while he was working on Trump's campaign, he wrote a book with Mike Flynn wrote a book with Michael Ledeen. Mike Ledeen was the first person that Mike Flynn called after he got a text message from the Russian ambassador Kislyak before he called Kislyak back. He called Michael Ledeen, "What should I do?" I assume that's what they talked about. So there was a connection, whether or not, there's no public, because their interests are so, their brand, their constituencies, their cohorts are so, they're polar opposites. And so they can't publicly show a friendship, but there certainly is a connection between the two of them. So Stacey, she wanted to let Trump know that there was a connection between Mark Zaid and Mike Flynn. And so she called Andy Biggs and got his voicemail. And then she called Jake Hoffman, who's now the RNC committee man for Arizona. And she got him. And he says, "You'll never guess where I am right now." She just happened to call him while he was on a break at the West Wing. and so she said, I can't believe it. I'm wanting to get this message to Trump. Can you ask him about this? And so she told him the story. And the response, he texted her back and said that Flynn is a good guy. He's got a bad rap, and you shouldn't look into this anymore. 2 weeks later, she had 2 people contact her and on Facebook and just, in her words, love bomb her and go after her. Just pursue a friendship with her. Not necessarily not romantic, just pursuing a friendship and kind of a position of influence with her. One of them, his name is I shouldn't say his name. But he's on the left, and he is a member of Bohemian Grove, and he's close friends with Alex Soros. The other one, his name is Dan Minnick. And Dan Minnick, this is crazy. Dan Minnick has been friends with 2 people for over 10 years. One of them is Tim Ballard, and the other is Ray Epps. Stacey's story is just wild. Ray Epps, in fact, Dan Minnick tried to introduce Stacey to Ray Epps just a few days after the election in 2020. This was before January 6th. Tried to get them together. Ray Epps was from Arizona. She was in Arizona. They didn't end up connecting. She ended up passing Ray Epps off to Liz Harris. So this is a wild story, and it keeps getting better. So Dan Minnick then introduced Stacey to a woman in Seattle who was she was the witness of these. She worked in a FedEx center. You may recall a story about shipping containers or containers full of ballots that were being shipped after the election out of Seattle through Seattle. And so he introduced Stacey to her, saying, you gotta get this information to Trump. But the thing is that, Dan Minnick was friends with Tim Ballard, who obviously is close also with Flynn, and he had other avenues, and Ray Epps, he had other avenues to get that story to Trump. But in my opinion, this was really to rope in Stacey Burke. And just a few days after that, she was roped into this Korean Air plane full of ballots thing when a guy named Scott Koch, who claimed to be related to the Koch brothers. He also claimed to her to be a high-level government contractor. And he also claims to her that the guys that unloaded the Korean Air plane were his guys, and that they took the ballots to half of the ballots to Maricopa County and the other half onto another plane that ended up in Las Vegas. And so they were trying to get, and there were about 70 different people that were running ops on Stacey Burke. This is just unbelievable. And this was all, I believe, the why is because she was getting the message to Trump that couldn't go to Trump, which was that Flynn was not his friend. That's my opinion. I believe that the why on all of this is because she was a threat to Flynn, and not just to Flynn, but to this greater operation that they had pre-planned going into the 2020 election. So Stacey, they were trying to get her to sign an affidavit, and they told her that they were going to use that affidavit to get a FISA warrant in order to do a raiding ambush, like a surprise ambush audit on the Maricopa County Center in November of 2020 before certification. So there was just like round the clock, completely urgent, desperate ops run on her, trying to convince her that to sign this affidavit about what she had heard from Scott Koch. and they were going to use that to try to get this FISA warrant to do the ambush, this audit in November of 2020 on the Maricopa County Center. Now, I believe that they probably would have, catching them by surprise, they probably would have caught all kinds of stuff. I mean, it would have been a mess. But I think that really the purpose of that was to try to compel Trump to sign the Insurrection Act. Because she refused to sign that affidavit, they had to go, it foiled that plan. They still, of course, went. Flynn and Byrne and Sidney Powell still ended up in the West Wing of the White House, like I said earlier, trying to compel Trump to sign the Insurrection Act, but they didn't have that fuel of this raid. I mean, really, what would have happened had they done this kind of ambush audit is it would have created a constitutional crisis. And it would have created it would have brought us to a place of complete chaos. And so that didn't happen. And I think thanks to Stacey Burke, I think she's a hero. So after that, it wasn't too long after that there was a break. I think it was within a day or two of that. There was a alleged attempted break-in at her house where her security system was cut. She caught people on camera in mass, snooping around the outside of her house. She was panicked. And so 1AP, the First Amendment Praetorian, who was, this guy that Robert Patrick Lewis, headed by Robert Patrick Lewis, although he wasn't directly involved in her story, he was never at her house. But they ended up, they convinced her to allow them into her home. They were there 24/7 for 7 weeks, between 3 and as many as 8 guys, all armed with at least 2 firearms each, in her home the entire time, running psyops on her. They stole her phone. She's got over 1,000 recordings from this time on her phone. And they were very nervous, clearly, about what she had on her phone. Her phone, they stole her phone. Her phone ended up at the Willard Hotel at Flynn's command center for months. There are some recordings out there, and I could play them another time, where she's pleading with Joe Flynn for her phone. She wants her phone back. And he starts yelling at her. He's just a total prick, just a total prick to her. Really, even if you don't know all the backstory, it's still shocking just hearing what kind of person Joe Flynn is to her. So there's a lot more to her story. There are car chases. There's an ambush in the desert. There's a lot more to it. She ended up on a mountain with one AP member that she believed was there to actually kill her, and that didn't end up happening. And she also ended up having in her possession a bag full of shredded ballots. And this is another thing that I'm going to break now that nobody knows. Flynn's people now are in possession of that bag full of shredded ballots. And so I should write a story about that and how that ended up happening. So that is a story. And I think that there's a lot of, she was a vulnerable adult, and there are crimes about abuse of a vulnerable adult that were committed there, I believe, by, allegedly by 1AP. And with Flynn's knowledge. And so that is one thing that I hope could lend towards, the judicial process actually getting involved and bringing us some justice. And another thing is just the apparatus of our own military intelligence apparatus being used against us on the left and on the right. And I would hope that we could actually see some FAFO about just the confusion, the deliberate psychological manipulation that's happened to the American public, not just by the Flynn Network, but by the mainstream media, because it's the exact same thing. It's divided families. It's divided this country, and it's got to stop. We all have this sense that it's got to stop. And yeah, I'm glad Stacey is still alive. I am too. I am very grateful for our friendship, and I think she's a hero. You can follow her on X. And I think God has protected her for a reason. And so, I hope to do more to tell her story. It's an amazing story. There's so much more to it. So that is, that's kind of what I had. And, the end result is that, even if we don't get that kind of justice, I think that it's on us. And, there's a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people talk about, when is Trump actually going to declare that Flynn's a bad guy? you know, and I don't know that he will. And maybe he's waiting for us. Maybe he's waiting for us, the independent investigators, to put all of this together and to get the word out to enough people, to persuade enough of our neighbors, to show people. I mean, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so maybe we're just waiting for that. Maybe Trump's waiting for that. And so, I think there are some serious indications that their house of cards is developing some serious cracks. And part of that is that, and the reason for that is because I'm seeing so many of you people of you that are like watching my show, and people that are watching Jeff and Shannon's show, and people that are listening to Ariel, and, and others, and Doc. There are a lot of people that are sharing evidence about the actual wrongdoing that Flynn and his cohort have done. And I think we just need to continue exposing that. We just need to continue saying no to the psyops, and sharing the evidentiary cause for the conclusions that we've come to, and using our First Amendment rights to do so. And I'm going to continue to do that courageously, and I think we all need to. And and we will see. We will see what happens. I have a great big bin in my imagination, in my mind, that is the things I can't control bin. And I have so many things in that bin. I just keep putting them there, and I just leave it all up to God, because what else can we do, right? Blake says it's divided MAGA. It has divided MAGA. It's divided families. It's divided this country. It's the same thing too that is, TDS, and Trump derangement syndrome, and that the left has. It is mental illness, mass formation psychosis, that has been put into our minds by this military intelligence apparatus, and Flynn is just a part of that. And yeah, Michelle says dividing MAGA is their goal, and that's certainly one of their goals, for sure. They want to divide us, and so many people are sucked up in it, and they have that actual cognitive dissonance where they cannot examine their own assumptions. And so I think the answer is to be statesmen who are able to do that, who are able to read, I think we need to be able to read CNN, for example, or, Washington Post, or, a story that has a bunch of language that's actually hostile towards us, and that, calling us election deniers, or calling us, anti-vaxxers, or whatever they want to call us, but still mining that journalism for evidence that is true, because there is investigative journalism that, often there's good journalists even at those outlets, and their editors just add in that kind of, biased language. And part of that is just to keep us away. I've been seeing on our side so many people that just won't go to the media on the left because it's offensive. And it is offensive, but we shouldn't be offended. And there is actually a lot of good there. So, So those are the stories I wanted to tell you, and I'm so glad that you chose to share this time with me, and I appreciate that. Go to my Substack, biggertruthmedia.com. I do have more. There is, if you join there and you search for Stacey Burke, you will see a members only interview that the two of us did. This was a couple months ago, and I think it was a really good interview. We talked about a lot of this stuff, so you can kind of hear from her own words certain aspects of the story. And I do hope to bring her back on. She's kind of nervous about doing so, but yeah, I do hope to either bring her on the show or to do more of an in-depth project with her to tell her story in more depth. So appreciate your support, and until next Monday, I will see you then.